Welcome to the first ever Super Mania live show. I am so very excited to launch this new show. If you have ever followed my previous show, Career Launch Live, you know I like unscripted and just kind of honest type shows, and that is exactly what you're going to get here. But we are going to be focusing on neurodiversity and mental health on this show. Why? Because neurodiversity is a superpower, and we are super excited to start sharing our powers with you. We're going to have education, inspiration, conversation. We want to grow and we want to provide a resource for the neurodiverse community and the communities around us that want to learn more about us and our superpowers. And I'm very excited today to have a wonderful first guest. He has some really cool work that he's doing right now within the neurodiverse community. So I want to go ahead and welcome on Jacob Levy.
Hey,
good
Catherine.
Morning.
Good morning.
Nice to meet you. And I'm so sorry, real quick, I owe another introduction. So you will notice that behind me is Jeremy. If you've also followed me on LinkedIn, you might already know Jeremy. He is our mascot for Titan ATS, my anti-bias applicant tracking system, and he will be the co-host on the show.
Hey,
and good morning, Pamela. And thank you, Jacob. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Jacob. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you so much, Catherine. Really appreciate you having me on the show. My name's Jacob Levy. I'm a career coach, disability advocate, person with a disability, SPED teacher, a bunch of other creative hats. So in terms of career coaching, I help job seekers target opportunities outside their network on LinkedIn and basically create visibility for themselves. I think one of the biggest issues I'm seeing, especially with neurodiverse job seekers, is they don't know where to start, right? Especially with the pandemic and everything. I feel like everyone kind of just got into panic mode and rushed to the job boards.
Right.
I have a special place in my heart for job boards.
We can have a whole other show about that. I promise.
Yes.
I'll have you on Career Launch Live when I start that back up. We'll have that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, in a nutshell, I don't like job boards simply because you lose the human connection.
Yes.
I think it's about, keeping the process H to H or human to human as long as you can. Inevitably, everyone has to submit a resume, but you want to add your value up front to a decision-making entity. And you can't do that simply with bullet points and dates of employment.
Right. 100%. And we're going to dive into that. But real quick, I want you to help me share with the world what is neurodiversity, because a lot of people are very confused by that term. So what is it to you?
Sure. So that's a great question. So if you just break it down, I mean, neuro means brain. Diversity, like if you break that word down, the prefix means like to split. Mm-hmm. And the suffix is basically like, I think of like university. So like as a whole.
Right.
But really it's just.
And that's perfect, by the way. And what an educator response. That was the best. You know what? That is the best definition anybody's ever given me on a show, period. That was so spot on. Because by the way, the actual definition is someone whose brain processes information differently from the whole. That is actually the definition. So that was so spot on. I love that.
Wow. I kind of just, that was total improv, but yeah.
You nailed it. You nailed your improv. And so it's an examples of some neurodiversities. What are some examples that you can think of? And this will not be all inclusive, a full list, by the way.
So like within the learning disability realm, I mean, there's ADHD, there's SLD, specific learning disabilities. That's a whole subset.
Yes.
Dyslexia. There's a whole range. I don't have the DSM.
No, I know. It's a long list. People think it's one or two things.
No.
And it even expands out into some kind of mental health related. So like bipolar, because of the mania phase and how your brain processes. People with anxiety disorders can function into that because it can actually chemically change how their brain functions when they're in a state of anxiety. So that can actually be a neurodiversity. So you're right. It's very, very broad category that actually, according to multiple studies, it kind of depends which one you read, but it falls somewhere between 30 and 40% of the population has some form of neurodiversity.
Wow.
Which
Wow.
is
Yeah, I think
huge.
the last stat I read was I think it was globally 1.1 billion
Hmm.
have some sort of disability,
Hmm.
which is, it's
Yeah.
astounding. Yeah.
And so I want to talk about that word too, because some people put, and I know ADA has, put the legal term of disability on some of these conditions, but not everybody views it that way. And some people do. So what are kind of your thoughts along that way?
Um, so it's really interesting in terms of, like, for example, when someone's applying to a job and they see
Mhm.
that EEOC section, you can check the box if you want. Um, there's a whole list right on that section. And one thing, like when I saw it a long time ago as a job seeker, that stuck out to me was, some of the disabilities listed are like diabetes,
Mhm.
which I didn't even think,
Yeah, I would never have thought
that
that. Yeah.
qualified. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think, in general, there's a lot of like misconception
Hmm.
around disability, especially in the workplace. Um, like if you have diabetes, you need, you might need accommodation,
Hmm.
right? You might need to check your insulin levels a few times a day, or whatever the case may be, and you need to be accommodated.
Right. I
So
think to your point, I think that's exactly what it is. I think it's more about accommodation than anything else. And I think they need to kind of, in my opinion, this is just an opinion. I would like to see them change the wording on
yeah,
that to
verbiage. Yeah.
accommodations, something about accommodations, because to your point, a lot of the neurodiverse community, they're not disabled as people picture that word. There's not really a hindrance necessarily, but they might need something different than somebody else. For instance, as part of my neurodiversity, which we'll talk about at the end of the show, I yes, the disabilities list is huge. One of our comments says the disabilities list is huge. Yes, it is. Um, I sometimes cannot be on screen. So sometimes I have to have an accommodation that allows me to call into something as opposed to being face to face. And face to face in human form is fine, but sometimes screens are a little bit too much for me to process, and can actually cause some seizure activity in my brain. So it's just different for everybody, right? It's just about those accommodations. And I want to lead that back into then you're talking about the job world, which is kind of my jam. So my history is I've run a recruiting firm for since 2014 that's all remote, and we specialize in helping small companies grow and with true diversity hiring, which is encompassing everybody and about really embracing differences and focusing on what's unique. And then I have Titan ATS, which is an applicant tracking system I developed that the target is to eliminate bias in the application process. Now we can't fix humans, but we can, and it's actually specifically designed to fire the resume, which resumes hashtags suck anyway, and for so many reasons, and actually helps the candidate better present themselves. And I worked very strongly with the neurodiverse community, and I'm still trying to work on it to continue to grow the product to be more and more neurodiverse friendly. So, what are some things? And when there's a third of your candidate base that's neurodiverse or has something that could be considered neurodiverse, wouldn't you want to adjust for that?
Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
Not necessarily with my ATS, that's not what I'm saying, but just in general, wouldn't you want to adjust for that? So what are you seeing? What are some concerns that our community is facing when it comes to job seeking?
Um, I think, like what I alluded to previously, it's like a lot of job seekers don't even know where to start,
Mhm.
and so, the tendency is they just kind of tend to follow the crowd, and so they'll run to job boards, they'll apply to 50 jobs a day, whatever, but they'll just click submit.
Right.
Right. And I don't really advocate that. I'm not saying don't apply. What I'm saying is, like, you want to become a product or a service on a social media platform. I will just stick to LinkedIn because that's my favorite. It's like the most
Mine
professional.
too.
Yeah, that's my jam. Um,
Me too.
but
I love
like,
it.
employers are on that platform 24 hours a day,
Hmm.
all over the world. And the thing
Hmm.
is, you can have zero connections. You don't have to be connected to anyone. You can get found by anyone in the world when you have an offensive mentality.
So how does that, so with the neurodiverse community, I'm sorry, my brain just got really excited about something that you said there. So this sounds like a great opportunity for the neurodiverse community that might struggle at like networking events or with some of the more outgoing kind of and extrovert type methods for networking. It sounds like what you're saying is that LinkedIn might be a good tool for them in their job search.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing is versus like a live event or on the spot. LinkedIn kind of, ever since the pandemic, LinkedIn has kind of built in accommodations. So if you need more like processing time, well, you don't have to speak with anyone live. You can formulate your thoughts, you can push out content, you can engage on somebody else's content. You could take all the time you need. Right?
I like that. And what a great accommodation too. Because sometimes it is just about, let me gather my thoughts. Let me get this right. And it really allows you, I think, to best present yourself, right? Which, especially for the neurodiverse community, can sometimes be a bit of a challenge when it comes to having somebody else understand you, depending on what your neurodiversity is. Some people are excellent at that within the neurodiverse community. Others struggle with it. For instance, people on the autism spectrum sometimes, not all, can struggle with that interpersonal communication. But if you give them a minute, they can blow your mind with their genius. My top advisor, Mervyn Kennedy McFoy, and by the way, anybody listening to this, please go follow Mervyn. He's an excellent diversity content producer, and he'll blow your mind with the stuff he puts out there. He's a complete genius. But it was so interesting to me because I had him be part of a group that was critiquing my ATS and kind of giving some feedback, right? Because I wanted to hear from him for all of his diversities, and kind of I was selected for that reason. And he didn't just give me some comments. This dude sent me a full-on presentation. And it wasn't critical. It was just, here are my thoughts, here are my ideas. I love this. This is how I should see this going. And it was so creative and so wonderful. And I immediately contacted him and got him to come join our project because awesome. He was so extraordinary in how he communicated. But he's, struggled some and not anymore. He's doing very well now, but he struggled some in the job search process because people didn't want to communicate the way that he communicates.
Interesting.
But LinkedIn is his platform, to your point, is a great platform for him because of those exact things. And so I found it very fascinating. And by the way, you have a comment that somebody liked I have an offensive mentality. You have to have the offensive mentality. Yes. In your job search, in your life, have an offensive mentality, live your life.
100%.
Be out there. And we have a question. You are both doing such amazing work. Thank you. What are some things you both do to help others embrace diversity? Ooh, it's a good one. I'm going to let you take that one, Jacob.
So diversity is an interesting word because it's a broad term. But if we're talking about the disability space or the neurodiverse space, so I guess one of the biggest questions people ask is like, how do I disclose my disability? Right. And, there's things you can do like when you're meeting with a hiring manager or recruiter ahead of time before the interview. But I actually say something a little bit counterintuitive. Everyone's got an opinion, which is fine. Right. What I suggest is when you're on LinkedIn and you want to push out content that supports what you do, right? Your subject matter expertise. Because again, a resume alone will not do it.
Right.
Okay? Because that's your past. You want to display your active hustle. So what I suggest is, and I did a post on this, weave your experience, your subject matter expertise into the fact that you have a disability.
Yes.
Weave your story into it and don't hone in on what you cannot do. Hone in on what you can do for an employer. That's what I found successful. And so I just started documenting my journey as a job seeker, as a person with a disability. And it was astounding. Like I had people like DM me on the back end, like unbelievable. And I think that's okay that happens. Like people don't have to disclose that in a comment. By the way,
Yes.
comments are public. So that's
Yeah.
another strategy.
Yes.
Right? But comments
Yes.
can be very powerful,
Mhm.
because if you comment on a job post and it's a decision makers are connected to other decision makers. So you
Mhm.
want to be very careful what you say, because everything has a digital footprint.
Yes.
Things on LinkedIn never disappear unless you physically delete it.
Right. And I
So,
think, and I like that too, by the way, that, to put your own, to let people, to kind of put that was a good answer. Most people focus on what you're telling other people do. You're say what you help the people in the community do to help others embrace them. That was a great answer. You're a good guest. We're going
thank you.
to,
Thank you.
you're a good first guest. So on my end, to answer that question, I'm going to answer it in two parts. So the first is to further what Jacob is saying and say, I like to tell people, in whatever method makes you comfortable, whether it's on LinkedIn, putting out content, which is what I did. And I did it accidentally, not realizing that people were going to latch onto my story, but it happened. And she said, great answer. Thank you, by the way, Jacob. So I had, I kind of did that accidentally, but also what I started realizing is whatever makes you comfortable. So I was up giving a speech at one point, and at one point it was on diversity and hiring. And at one point I just stopped. It was a SHRM event, by the way, so it's kind of a little bit on the conservative side. I stopped and I said, "F it," except I didn't say F, but you get the point. It's LinkedIn, so I'm going to clean it up. And I said, "Let's just get real." And I sat there and I had a conversation with the audience and let them ask questions with me. I stopped basically speaking to them and just let them talk. And we had a whole fantastic discussion, both from the diverse side and people who didn't feel that they had a diversity, but they had so many questions surrounding diversity. And neuro-diversity, of course, comes up with that. And people always go, I always get like 10 hands. What is that? And then they stop and go, oh, yeah, well, I know this person who has ADHD and they're the best salesperson I ever had, or they're the best program manager I ever had, or, whatever. And people start building on that and it registers with them that difference can be awesome. And neurodiversity to me is the easiest one to get people to see that with, because you can always think of someone in your life that you're like, oh, yeah. And because of their difference, they have this superpower that they can do. It's actually part of that difference. So that's one thing I do. I like to start conversations with people and just let them ask questions. I think that's a huge, huge part of getting people to embrace diversity is let them ask questions and give them a safe space. Because if someone doesn't understand and you attack them when they ask questions, that's counterproductive. They need, at least in my opinion. Now, if the question's hateful, that's a whole other thing. But if they're legitimately asking out of a place of wanting to understand, I think it's so important to engage in those conversations. What do you think?
Well, a few quotes came to mind. So I think Albert Einstein said, even a genius asks questions.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. And yeah, I mean, like, if somebody doesn't know something, if anything, it's empowering, right? They want that information, so that they don't want to be ignorant to the fact and have preconceived notions. I have another quote that I always use, and I've actually gotten some pushback on it, which is fine.
Okay.
But I believe that a disability is not an inability to do something.
Yeah.
I believe it's an opportunity to go on an alternate path
Mm-hmm.
to arrive at a solution. And it's
Yes.
on this path where novel and innovative ideas exist.
That is a great quote.
It's kind of lengthy, but
it is. I don't care who said it.
me.
Oh, you know what? I do that too. I quote myself too. I'm not gonna lie. So that's fantastic.
It's just I just formulated over time, just like from my experience.
Oh, can I quote you on my website for the show
Sure,
with that? I'm going to do
sure.
that. That is a fantastic quote.
I literally use it. I have it copied in my notes section. And whenever somebody's talking about like disability this, disability that, I mean, I literally sometimes will copy paste it because it's like, that's all I want to say.
Like, that's it. This is just all I have to say about this. Yeah.
That's it. And then I just drop the mic. Like, that's it.
I love it. And really and truly, I think that was perfect, because the point of the show is to teach people about neurodiversity and to help people within the community feel empowered by their diversity, not ashamed of it or hidden of it. And you know what? Sometimes our diversities are tough. For instance, and I'm going to go ahead and lead into one of my neurodiversities. I'm going to talk about the other one on another show, but I'm bipolar. I'm a bipolar business owner. I do not medicate 24/7. I've learned I have some medication for really bad days, but I have learned to maintain it through practices and cognitive behaviors and all kinds of it. Took a long time to learn. I do not advocate no medication, by the way. Whatever you choose for your own personal wellness, whatever is the best path for you, please do that. But there are days that my mania is my superpower and I can work at the speed of 6 people and I can do the jobs of 6 people. And because of my mania, I have my success. And I can honestly say that because of my mania, I have my success. Because of my depression cycles, because of the down cycles to that, I have more empathy to other humans. And I have, and I also have been forced to learn to rest as well. So, but the downside is that there are days that it is crippling to be that manic, or it is crippling to be that depressive. And so while we're not saying here that it's not hard sometimes to be a superhero, a neurodiverse superhero, that there is a beautiful side to it too, and an exciting side, and a side that gives you super powers, right? And that allows you to be awesome for a company. Like Mervin, I was talking about earlier, my advisor, he's awesome because he's autistic. You know, Dan Roth, I know you know Dan. One of my favorite superheroes. In fact, he's listed as one of my fellow superheroes on the site for the show. Dan is awesome. He is an ADHD superhero who has so many superpowers. I can't even begin to list all of them, but he's in a time of crisis, he came out and decided to help others. And because of his neurodiversity, he could handle all the comments and influx help that people needed. And he has since helped hundreds of people land jobs, and recruiters get candidates. And he's an amazing advocate. Absolutely amazing.
Totally agree. I think that's how we got connected in his group.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so shout out to Dan and the Job Connection Tuesday Collective. Everybody should totally check that out. Especially if you're looking for a job and you're in the neurodiverse community, we are for you. The collective is for you.
100%.
100%. So I want to wrap up the show. Usually I do it with a quote, but you kind of nailed that. So we're going to kind of skip over that. I want to end the show. So one of the kind of themes, and I know not everybody feels like a superhero that's neurodiverse, and that's okay. That's okay. But one of the things that we're going to do on this show is we're going to talk about some of the good things. And then the next episode, we're also going to talk about some of the downsides as well, and some of the things that we all deal with. But Jacob, to wrap up the show, I'd like to know what you think your superpower is.
Oh man, I don't think I've ever been asked that actually. I probably should have an answer.
No, it's okay. Your neurodiverse superpower.
I think I have more than one, but I think this might seem a little cheesy, but kindness.
Mm-hmm.
I think in like any situation, I understand how to just be kind to other people. It's a huge strength. It's a huge strength because a lot of times people will react impulsively, which I do. I mean, I have impulses too, but I think I just try and approach everyone with like a blank canvas. I don't know anything about them. So just kindness.
I love that.
And then also wearing like 74 different hats because I don't know how to wear one. But yeah, just hustling and just like, hustling and kindness.
I love it. And you know what? Kindness is a superpower. I think that's one of my dad's biggest superpowers is his kindness. And I grew up watching that. I don't have that. I'm a complete jerk, but
hey, honesty. That's one of your superpowers.
I am honest. Yeah. And then also, and for me, I think one of my biggest ones is my superhuman ability to conquer, to just see something and go, that's what I'm going to do. And a lot of that comes from that neurodiversity. and giving that boost of confidence that comes with the mania cycle, right? But then I learned to kind of hold on to that too over the years. And so I think that's one of my superpowers and my super ability to learn. I love learning. I'm not a nerdy person that when I meet a person, I need to know everything about you because I want to learn. And if you're from somewhere else, if you're different from me in any way, I'm going to latch onto that and probably annoy the bejesus out of you asking you questions about it.
I am very similar. If I'm into a topic or a brand new topic, hyper focus.
Yes.
Totally hyper.
Yeah,
And that's one of the things that I struggle with, like working in, like a 9 to 5, like a lot of misunderstanding,
Right.
the way my brain functions with how like sometimes it's a little square with an organization. So yeah, I definitely have trouble with that. But yeah,
I've been right there with you, by the way. I do relate to that very much so. And good morning, Cassandra. Cassandra says good morning to us and hello. So hi back to you. So with that, tell everybody, as we wrap up the show, tell everybody where to find you.
Sure. So LinkedIn, I'm always swimming on LinkedIn. I have a website called searchable.work. I'm always also on Clubhouse. I have a club called Searchable Job Seekers. So I'm always doing pop-up rooms, things like that, adding value for job seekers and small businesses, because there's a lot of carryover with like how to advertise yourself and add value, whether you're a small business or a job seeker.
Right. Absolutely. I love that. And so therefore, if you are in the especially if you're in the neurodiverse community, but go ahead and reach out to him anyway. Go ahead and reach out to Jacob. He would be glad to help you with your job search. I know a lot of people in that community looking, so I think you'd be a great resource for them. Also, again, please feel free to join us in the Job Connection Tuesdays. That's it. We are a collective there on LinkedIn. You can come find us there. And any final words to the neurodiverse community today?
I'm going to quote someone else. Okay. I'm full of quotes. It's by Oscar Wilde. He said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is taken."
I love that quote. That's one of my faves too.
I think it's it makes sense for the neurodiverse community.
It does. It does. And you know what? I think it could not possibly be a better note on which to end. So I am going to forgo my closing and say thank you so much for having joined us today on Supermania. Please tune in next week, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. See you there. And thank you for coming, Jacob.
Thanks so much, Catherine. Appreciate it.